head coach, that Mike Yeo was fired, that John Torchetti is the new interim head coach. Quite a bit of talk on what he needs to do throughout, from now to the end of the season to get that interim tag removed. If there's anything he could do, obviously, if they won a freaking Stanley Cup, they would remove the interim tag and keep him full time. I mean, like, duh. But we'll address that real quick, and then we'll move on to the more recent topics regarding the Wild. I think simply that if John Torchetti can do two things: A, get this team to the playoffs, and then B, have them playing at a highly competitive level in the playoffs. They don't even necessarily need to win a series for me, but it needs to be a well-played, competitive series where just they ran up against an incredible team who barely outplayed them. I think as long as those two little things, not little things, but they're not grand things either. So I think as long as those two reasonable things are achieved this season, then John Torchetti should absolutely get the interim tag removed and be brought back on as full-time coach, given a 2 or 3 year contract. And now this week we have even more Minnesota Wild front office activity news to report, as the Wild executed a trade of all things. Something fairly uncommon, other than Devin Dubnyk, obviously. But I think most of us Wild fans had given up on any kind of trade at all this year, that it just wasn't going to happen. We had the team we had, and that was it. But we were, in fact, able to make a trade. We sent third-string goalie Nicklas Backstrom to the Calgary Flames for forward David Jones. Davy Jones! Oh, look at that. Yeah, forward Davy Jones. I remember him when he was with the Monkeys. I used to watch him with my grandma. And then, I think, wasn't he a Pirate at one point in time, too? I don't know if that was before the Monkeys thing or after, if maybe just the movie about it was made after. I don't know. But anyway, Wild acquire forward David Jones for third-string goalie Nicklas Backstrom. Now, on paper, this is a fantastic trade for the Wild. You traded a player that you don't expect any contribution from whatsoever for a guy that you can at least get out on the ice and give some opportunities to contribute to the team. I am by no means saying that David Jones is going to come in and make any significant impact or anything like that here in Minnesota, but he will have the opportunity to provide depth to this team and see ice time and find ways to contribute, something Nicklas Backstrom or any third string goalie for that matter, when you got two in front of them that are really good or pretty good, as is the case with the Wild's pair of goalies in front of him, that's just a really smart, no-brainer type of trade. You're giving very, very little value that you're using for, realistic potential value. You're definitely not going to get anything less as far as what you're getting out of that player taking up that roster spot. So I think it's a fabulous move for the Wild. The only thing I don't like about this trade, and we've talked about this for several weeks here on the show, is I wanted to see accountability. And that was where I was so happy to see Yogo, as finally someone's being held accountable. But that holds, I do need to hold that true then to this trade as well, because the one thing I don't like about this trade is the player we traded away was not in any way accountable for any struggles or failures that we've had over the last 80 games, the last half of last season, the playoffs, and everything we've seen up to this season. So that's the one thing I don't like about it. I would have liked to have seen someone get traded away that had been a part of the failures and had, struggled mightily and not done his job as well, to send a message throughout the locker room that, you can't just get away. It's not just always going to get blamed on the coach, and you can't just quit on him and get a new one every time you don't like how things are going. You guys are held accountable as well. So that's the one thing I don't like about the trade. But like I said, on paper, overall, it was a genius, brilliant, no-brainer, total win trade for the Wild, whether they get, impressive production out of David Jones or whether they just get some spotty, moderate production and contribution from David Jones. Either way, they're coming out on top. And my regular listeners know here on Balls Deep Sports Talk, we love coming out on top. So, finishing up on the rest of our Wild news and then the rest of our hockey news. Last time we talked sports here a week ago, the Wild were getting ready to head out east they were coming off a loss to the Islanders, and they were getting ready to head out east to take on the Philadelphia Flyers, and then the very next night the Washington Capitals. They lost both of those games by a score of 3-2 both times. Flyers game they let slip away, should have won that. Capitals game, they were playing against a superior team and played them extremely well. So ironic how you can have two totally different feelings coming out of two games that resulted in the exact same score. But that was the case. Wild left the Flyers game feeling like they let one slip away. Wild left the Capitals game feeling as though, even though they had lost, the Wild, are for real and to be taken seriously and can play with anyone. They used that confidence then back at home on the 28th of February, the day before Leap Day, because this was a leap year. I hope you enjoyed your Leap Day. And they beat the first place in their division, Florida Panthers, at home by a score of 3-1, getting their first home victory at the XL Energy Center since December 28th. 2 nights later, that being last night, they were again at home, where they had a huge game against the Colorado Avalanche, which they ended up winning by a final score of 6-3. Was really more of a 5-3 game. Got an open netter, I want to say, there towards the end. But either way, back-to-back home wins for the Wild. And the one against the Avalanche was huge because they were sitting in the 8th seed of the playoff picture at the time. And we were sitting 9th, so that was our closest team that we were chasing. So that was a huge win. We'll see how that plays into the standings here in a moment. The Wild's next game is tomorrow night at the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's a 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time start. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are awful. They stink something fierce. So that should be an easy win, a game that the Wild expect to win. And then 2 days after that, on the 5th, which would be Saturday, they will be at Buffalo to take on the Sabres, another really crummy team that they should be able to beat. So it could be 4 wins in a row here for the Wild before they hit the second game in their doubleheader, that being on Sunday when they go back home to the XL Center to take on the division foe St. Louis Blues. So 3 hockey games before we'll be talking sports here again next week, and I expect the Wild to come out of that 2-1 the next time we're talking sports. So now swinging our attention over to the standings, as I mentioned, that victory over the Avalanche last night does leave the Wild, in fact, in possession of the 8th place playoff spot in the Western Conference, in a tie technically with the Avalanche, but we do have 1 game in hand on the Avalanche. We are both tied with 68 points. Then, boy, it's a big separation to 7 through 1. The next wild card team would be the Nashville Predators, 7 points ahead of the Wild and Avalanche with 75. Then you've got your 3 Pacific Division representatives, the San Jose Sharks with 74 points, the Ducks with 76 points, 2 points out of first place in their division behind the LA Kings, who have 78 points. Like I said, my preseason pick was the Ducks to be coming out of the Western Conference entirely, so I love seeing them climb into first place here in their division before it's all said and done. And then your 3 best teams in the Western Conference, all in the Central Division. You've got the St. Louis Blues with 83 points, tied with the Dallas Stars with 83 points, who, man, they were hot all season, and now here, post-All-Star break, they just, even going into the All-Star break just a little bit, they have definitely cooled off. And the Blackhawks with 85 points are your number 1 seed currently still in the Western Conference. Then moving over to the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference, for the record, is the better conference this year. If you're looking at conference versus conference, the best division is still the Central Division, but the best conference is the Eastern Conference. And to show you that, okay, so our last place team in the Western Conference has 68 points, and our first place team has 85. Okay, remember that. Our last place team in the Eastern Conference has 72 points, 5 points better than the Western Conference. And our number 1 seed, the Washington Capitals, has 98 points, 13 points more than the number 1 seed in the West. So if you for a second think that the Western Conference is the better conference this year in hockey, you are dead freaking wrong. But overall, out east, like I said, we got the Capitals at 1, leading the Metropolitan Division, best team in all of hockey at 98 points, and they were my East pick. Thank you, Iceberg, for your inside expert advice. They're followed by the Rangers at 80 points and the Islanders at 75 points. In the Atlantic, you got the Panthers in first with 80 points. The Lightning was 78. The Bruins was 76. And then your top 2 wild cards are the Red Wings with 75 and the Penguins with 72. Chasing them would be the Flyers, Hurricanes, Devils, and Senators. And in our final bit of hockey news before we get to some balls dribble, the World Cup hockey tournament teams rosters were announced today. Big to-do on Espen about it. I'm super excited for this tournament. I can't wait. I'm just a casual hockey fan, to be quite honest with you. I very much enjoy watching the Wild every chance I get, and any hockey game for that matter. But in comparison to my fandom in football, basketball, baseball, even golf, UFC, WWE, all that stuff, it pales. I'm a casual hockey fan. I'm just being honest. I'm not being negative against hockey in any way. Like I said, I love it more every time I watch it. But I'm really excited for this World Cup hockey tournament. Like I said, it doesn't start until September 17th, 2016 here, before the next NHL season begins. But it's going to be awesome. You've got somewhere between 8 and 16 teams from all over the world playing against each other. You've got a Team USA, you've got a Team Russia, you've got a Team Sweden, you've got a you've got a 23 and under team from North America for young guys. It's going to be fantastic. Now, the USA team has at least 2 representatives from the great state of Minnesota playing on the team. Of course, one being Zach Parise. I don't recall the other one. Look it up. I highly recommend going to ESPN or just typing it in your search engine on the World Cup hockey rosters to see all the results. But there are plenty of Minnesota Wild, both on Parise on the USA team, as well as Koivu and several others representing their countries. Team Canada looks phenomenal. They look like the favorite right now, looking at the rosters on paper. But yeah, check that information out if you're interested in it. All you got to do is search it online. You'll get all of it. Like I said, I'm not going to go over it in detail. When we get close to it, holy cow, are we going to preview that thing and analyze it and talk about it when it comes time many months from now in September. But for now, I just wanted to make you aware of it and throw it out there so that you could further investigate should you be interested in that sort of thing. But I am stoked just about hearing it and seeing the little bit that I did see today. And as a hockey fan, once the Stanley Cup Finals ends in June, September will be it's going to be great, because normally you got to wait till October, November, to get back to your hockey. Now you got September, and it's going to be like this awesome freaking tournament thing. So really looking forward to that. All right. That's it for Balls on Ice. Like I said, now we're going to move on over to Balls Dribble, where we talk basketball, both professional and college. So, of course, that means we'll start with my and possibly your Minnesota Timberwolves, who, of course, will recap what's happened since the last time we talked. And they also, in shocking fashion, have a few front office moves that they made as well regarding players on their roster, or that used to be on their roster, we should say. and we'll fill you in on what happened there and what my little bit of thoughts are as well. But so the last time we talked, T-Wolves lost a fairly decent game to the Raptors.